about raising the next generation. And I'm very sure that you realize that this is a very, very important topic, because it seems that we have failed, both as a church, as a community, as a nation, as families, in the very important task of raising the next generation. Nobody really needs to tell you that we feel that. All you need to look at is we look at ourselves and we look at society, and it's just obvious. It's the evidence is there. Broken homes, traumatized kids, broken society, all eventually starts from the home. Now, the enemy has been very clever, and he has convinced us to look away from the home and look away from ourselves, and we blame everything, and we blame everybody else, but to point the finger at ourselves. And some of us have been the products of failed homes, and we are dealing with the trauma, and sometimes out of ignorance, we're not even aware of how much damage has been done to us. And sometimes out of pride, because we feel we ought to know better, we're not even able to engage help when we need it. We don't admit that the all-important institution, which is called the home, is the one we fail to get get adequate information about. First of all, we don't happen to have a lot of information about how to even build a home in the first instance, how to be a man, how to be a woman, how to be a father, how to be a mother, how to be a wife, how to be a husband. These are things I believe that in God's mind, God intended that every human child will have education about. When a child comes into the world, often nowadays what the parents just want is the child to go to school and to get a job. But God, who has made every one of us, has an agenda for each and every one of us, and there's a body of knowledge that will expect us all to partake in. And the home plays a very important part in the education of a child. If you notice that God didn't set up schools, human beings set up schools. God had expected that Adam and Eve will be the ones to teach their children. He expects that men and women will be the ones to teach their children. And if, as part of the support of the teaching of the children, we use the schools and the churches, that's fine. But then to put all the responsibilities upon the schools and the churches and the government is very, very dangerous. And we can see the effect of it. Of course, there are forces and elements that will want us to put all our trust in the system. But I'm here to tell you today that that's not God's way. So we're going to be looking at the foundation of this whole conversation. So often our webinars follow a certain principle. We first kind of sort of bring out the foundations of it, then the foundations of whatever it is that we're teaching, and also then we teach the practice of it. We discuss the practice of it. Then we examine the problems that we might face when we're trying to practice it, and then we begin to propose and give suggestions on how we can overcome those problems so that we can practice it well. Today's webinar is not going to follow that pattern. That's because this is introductory. I will hope that we can follow up on this next month, because I just want to throw the ideas out there, see what you guys think, come back with a few questions, and then we can then build from there to make sure that we're supporting the parents as much as we can. So if you look on your screen, you find the scripture, Proverbs 22, verse 6, says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So train, if you imagine the word train and think of the picture of a big locomotive or a tube train or any train, you realize that the reason why a train is called a train is because it follows a particular track. So more or less it's saying that you should set the child on a particular track in the way he should go. And even when he's old, he will not depart from it, because we're supposed to lay culture on the child's heart that the child will find easy to submit to and to work with. It says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. Now, in some of our previous webinars, we have spoken about the purpose of a home. Many people think about the wedding, but they don't think about why they are even married. What is the end product of the marriage? What are they supposed to build? What does a home look like? A lot of times when we think of home building, we approach it with a lot of sentiment and a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings. So for instance, if you have ask an average man or woman, what a man or woman thinks the home building is different. It's different for men, it's different for women. So for instance, a man just thinks a home is to get a house and be able to put money down. A woman would think that a home is just being able to dress the house and make the house look good and have guests over for a few nights in a week. Yeah, but that's the house. But the home is something else. But we can talk a lot more about the home in other webinars. Second point I'd like to mention today is that God expects every Christian home, when a man and woman comes together under God to marry, God actually expects the Christian homes to reflect his government, first of all. So that means in the home, he expects each home to reflect Christ and his ecclesia and the influence that Christ and his body ought to have on the world and creation. God expects each home unit to be an expression of that. And he expects that the culture of Christianity will start from the home, where you and your children will learn life course values based on God's word. That's God's primary method of instruction, method of training, method of discipleship is in the homes. And it's little wonder that you find out in the New Testament that when new believers also got saved, it was in the homes that they were discipled and not in amphitheaters or auditoriums. So God expects that the Christian home becomes the base of nurture, the base of culture of the next generation. Very, very important. Some of these I'm telling you can be mentioned in church, but they are not taught in such a way where we begin to apply ourselves to study and to ensure that we prepare ourselves for this important task of raising the leaders of the next generation. Now, let's talk about parenting. The responsibility of life education is 100% on the parents, not on the government, not on the church, quote unquote, organization, not on the community, but on the parents, because the parents are the stewards of the children. God has appointed the parents as the steward of every child that is coming to the world. Well, we do know that some people are irresponsible and they throw their body around the place and they are having children out of careless acts, of careless sexual acts and stuff. That's not God's intention. We have broken God's program. So when you're a parent, a lot of times we find ourselves parents before we're ready to be parents. We find ourselves biological parents when we're not ready to really be able to parent or to father or to mother someone. But we can learn on the job. It can be picked up. So that's not really an issue. But it's for us to realize that the 100% responsibility is upon the parents to make sure that the child gets life education. Now, what is life education? Life education is the understanding of why we're here, who we are, what we're meant to do, and how we're meant to do it. Now, some of you may think that education is what they learn in school. Let me tell you something about education in school. What they teach in schools is physical sciences and abstract sciences, social sciences, and a little bit of Christian religious knowledge, which is not really teaching anything about faith. It's just giving history, and giving information about the different beliefs that people have. So don't think for once that what your children are being taught in school will prepare them for anything. And even in the teaching the physical sciences and the social sciences, you find out that nowadays there's a lot of corruption in that. In social sciences, people are being taught, to relate wrongly. They're being taught about people wrongly. They're being taught to define people as objects rather than persons. So you find out that there's a lot of corruption in the educational system. But guess what? Nobody tells the child about his spirit. Nobody tells the child about his soul. Nobody tells the child about his purpose. Most of us didn't start to hear about purpose until we were in our teens, until we're probably some of us in our 20s. This is not supposed to be. But as a parent who is responsible, we ought to be the ones who determine the sort of exposure our child needs to what education they need per time. And the fact that they're getting secular education in school doesn't mean we should not look into other areas where they need to learn. And that's one of the things I'm going to challenge you about today. Now, to the average parent expects the responsibility of education to flow this way. First of all, they believe it's supposed to be the government's job. Now, where the government fails, we believe that the church should pick up. Where the church fails, we believe that the community should pick up. Where the community fails, then we pick it up as parents. But as far as God is concerned, it should start from God to us, from us to our children, and then society and the church support. So it starts from God to us. So we are responsible for that. So some of this education will be delivered by parents, some by other agencies, the church community, the school, and the world. But the parents are the one with authority to give access to these agencies. So your children should not be learning anything that you do not have a say about, you do not have a view on. You are not thinking about how it impacts them. But you are 100% responsible before God for a child's life programming. And I use that word deliberately. We must program our children the way they should go. The previous scripture we read in Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child, program up a child in the way that it should go. And if you look at the word should, which means you have discerned before God what he should do. Don't behave like the African parents who say you must be a doctor, a nurse, or a lawyer. No, what if that's not what you should do? In order to know what a child should do, you should be someone who's close to God and have an understanding of what child that God has given you to steward, so that you don't cause the child to walk a different path in destiny. A child is like a tender shoot, and a child will take anything that is coming at him. That's why when we come into the world, we come with nothing in our brains. Everything that we become will pick up from our outside world, really. So a child is malleable to external agents, but also the child is growing by itself. And the child is making sense of its own identity, its purpose and place in the world. A child needs to form within itself its own unique interpretation of his or her world in order to engage it meaningfully. I'll repeat that again. A child is a tender shoot. That means it can be bent left or right, forward or backwards. And is malleable to external agents. So you see that programming of a child comes through external input into the child's heart and mind. But the child also within the child will begin to learn, has self-determination, is trying to make sense of who he or she is, why he or she is here, and where he or she needs to be in life. How are they positioned to other people? A child needs to form within him or herself his own unique interpretation of his or her world in order to engage meaningfully. Because ultimately, what we are programmed to seek in this life is meaning, is relevance, is the big question, why are we here? And the parents are supposed to offer that to a child. From a child's infancy until the teenage stage, you find out that the degree of malleability will decrease. So when a child is very young, they're very malleable. As they grow, they become less malleable because they are becoming set. They have setting an understanding, setting an impression about who they are, why they're here, and who they're supposed to be with. So a lot of effort must be put in at the early stages to set the right foundations for the child in the mind. So I don't know, because sometimes, when I see couples and the way the world has become now, we set different goals for ourselves. So we have couples who are career-oriented couples, ministry-oriented couples, and all of these things. That whilst all of those things that you do outside the home are great, as we're trying to fulfill purpose, but we also must understand that if we need to have impact on the future, we must focus on the home. We must focus on the way we raise children. You understand? So I'd like for you to note all of these things, that the child is malleable, and we don't have all the time to bend the child's mind towards God's principles. And we have tremendous power, to shape the way society will become. You think of it, most of the people have caused, all the people have caused the world troubles up to date came from a home. And so also those who did the world good. And the environment within which they were cultured and nurtured had an impact on who they have become. So you have the power to actually shape the next generation. We collectively, particularly as a Christian community or as a community of saints or wherever we are, if we decide to work together, we can introduce the children of the next generation to a culture where they are able to bring changes. They're able to think differently to this generation and to bring changes to their world. Now, I'm going to talk about the methods that are important. Like I said, I'm throwing a lot of principles at you. I hope that you're able to catch up. I'm going rapid fire. Hopefully, we'll be able to have a time later on in the year where we can spend the whole day together looking at the practical ways in which we can apply this method. So I'm throwing principles at you, but trust me, we still need to have a deeper conversation about how to work this method. I just want to throw things at you to make sure that you're thinking in the right way. You're asking yourself questions that, do I believe these things? Have I been practicing these things? Are there things that I need to learn? And then we can then take it forward and then learn. So definitely, if you're going to parent, if you're looking at parenting being the process of tending a tender shoot and guiding it and growing it and nurturing it and pointing it and empowering it to grow up, to grow into a certain direction, because after a while, in about 20 years or so, this tender shoot will have become a tree on its own and have a certain direction in life that will be irreversible. So we want them to make good decisions concerning their faith, concerning their relationships, concerning their efforts in life, and concerning what they pursue as success and what is relevant. And you see, a lot of times, children, whether we're teaching them or not, they're picking up stuff anyway, but like I said to you, you must not see education as just learning the physical sciences and the social sciences. Education, first of all, starts with learning about God, knowing who God is. The scripture says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You want them to have a sense of their source, their spiritual source. You often relate your identity to what you perceive as your source. So an identity actually is what you identify with. From the word identity, identify. So when you're able to let the child identify their source as God, they are likely to think of themselves as children of God. If you let them see themselves as from primates, they're likely to behave like monkeys. If you let them think they're citizens of the world, they're going to behave like Babylonians. So you have to realize that education really starts from letting them know the source, which is God. Secondly, education also starts from letting them understand who they are, how God has made human beings to function, their spirit, their soul, and their body, their components, and the issues that they're going to deal with. Then you have to understand what's the purpose of life. Why are we here? What are the different things that are possible? So there's a whole raft of conversations we can have about that. Maybe the next session we will talk about all of those things that you can bring as a knowledge nugget, or things that you can work with. We're going to speak about certain values at the end of this webinar that you can write down. But just understand the fact that parenting is about shaping the child into the future that you discern of God that they ought to be, and you're empowering them in that direction so they can make the right choices in their career direction, in the relationships, in what they do, and how they relate to the world. Proverbs 1:8 says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and don't reject your mother's teaching." The first method of parenting is modeling. And I don't think I need to explain what modeling means. It just means to be an example, to be the witness of what you want to teach, to have shown and demonstrated your expertise in an area that you want to transfer knowledge. So I don't, and there's so many ways I can explain that, but I think we basically get what modeling means. It just means being someone the child can follow, being an example of what the child could be, because often children are going to pick up these things, whether you want them to pick it up or not, they're going to pick up on these things, and they're likely going to become who they see you as. So a lot of times, our children are a reflection of the things that they have seen or not seen in us. Children learn more from what they see of adults than what they hear. Who we are speaks so loudly they can't hear what we say many times. And this is a very sobering statement, which we all have to think about and ask God for help. That to be a parent means you have to be modeling the truth you want to pass across to them. You have to struggle to model it. Otherwise, you may lose the right to influence them. The second M that you need to think of is mentoring. Mentoring just means being there at the different ages and stages of their lives to guide and disciple, to mentor and assist as their souls. Those words are carefully chosen as their souls are being built on the foundation of the word. Now, this will involve teaching, instructions, and guided practice. So you actually need to see yourself as a parent, as a discipler. So now, first of all, you're a model, so which means you don't have any problem practicing the things you're teaching, but then you are there and intentional in the way you are mentoring, guiding, discipling, and helping their souls. Now, note the word is their soul. Now, I'll give you a little bit of insight into this. You see, we're made in God's image and likeness in our spirits. So our spirit has God's DNA, and it can grow to become as it is. So the more we feed on God's word, the more our spirit grows. However, you see, our soul is shaped by the culture around us. So our soul can be deformed, defiled, corrupted, malformed, depending on environment. A lot of us, for instance, who are on this call, including myself, we've had to deal with the trauma of imperfect homes. If you were born from any Adamic family, no matter how good that family is a dysfunctional family because it's not operating at the optimum level that God wanted it to. So no matter how perfect you think you are, we are also broken. So there are also always degrees of deformity in our soul. And when I mean soul, what do I mean by soul? In our mind, the information that is in our mind are corrupt, they're untrue, they challenge the knowledge of God. Our imagination, are not always right. We are more carnally minded than we're spiritually minded. And think of a child, that the first thing a child comes in contact with is their physical senses and their emotions and their appetites. So all those things are raging within them. They need very strong grounding and the foundation of the word. And of course, prayer. There's their intellect, the way they process information that's going to be affected by their temperament, by their personality, by their hormones, by their emotions, all different things are happening in their souls at the same time. The self-perception, they're dealing with esteem issues. Who am I? What am I? So all our parenting, aside from feeding them in the spirit, is actually trying to configure their souls to be healthy. Okay, so I pray that the Lord grants you understanding of what I'm saying, but like I said, there'll be time for questions and answers. And the third M that we need to note when we're thinking of parenting is monitoring. Monitoring is being able to give the children godly enforceable boundaries where you are actually making sure that to the extent as God is helping you, you are able to guide them. Think of it this way: a shepherd guiding sheep. The psalmist wrote and said, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." So what does the rod do? The rod is for correction. The staff has a crook at the end of it to put around the neck of the sheep in case the sheep is going astray. So think of that. Monitoring means you give them room to be free, but you must set enforceable boundaries. And some of you are parents and who are psychologists, you will understand why it's important for people to have boundaries. Even as human beings, when we don't have boundaries, we lose life meaning because we need boundaries to test the limits of our expression. Sometimes you need to set godly enforceable boundaries. Don't bring up the children in such a way where they can do whatever they feel they want to do. That's not love. If you say because you love a child, you're letting the child get away with tantrums and doing things that they ought not to be doing, it's not good. You are not being a faithful parent if you allow all sorts of things to happen. So you have to be able to monitor your children by setting enforceable boundaries. So you must set the boundaries, you must communicate the boundaries, you must negotiate the boundaries, and constantly monitor to aim their growth straight internally. So while you're setting all these boundaries, all you are checking is how they are responding, what questions they're asking, how they are processing the information. You're looking into their eyes, and it's a continuous, consistent thing because you have an end point in mind. So monitoring is another important thing that you need to know. But like I said, there will be chances to ask questions later. I know I'm just throwing this on you like a freight train. So we're now going to look at culture pointers. Now, whilst you are aiming the child for something, I've just written a few things just to give you what to aim for when you are discipling your children or parenting them. So parenting and discipling are actually the same thing. So for some of you who want to be disciplers, of people, you want to raise disciples, just think that discipleship is actually spiritual parenting. So it's not just teaching and instruction, it's actually parenting people. So all of the things I'm teaching actually can work for a younger Christian. But of course, in order to be a parent to a younger believer, you also need to follow these things. You have to be a good model. You have, to at least model something, even if you are not fully mature yet. You have to be able to model. You have to be able to mentor, and you have to be able to monitor. So anyway, let's go to the culture pointers. Psalm 127, 3-4 says, "Children are a heritage and a gift from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb, a reward, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth." Now, what it's basically saying is that, like arrows are honed and pointed and sharpened and put on a bow and aimed for a target, and they fly almost of their own accord because of the energy that the string put on the back of the arrow. That is how we should aim our children. Once they leave the bow, that's it, they're not coming back. You understand? So we must aim them right. Now, children must be given a sense of the following by their interaction with the family. It's important that you think about all of these things, and I'm still compiling a list, so I'm sure this list might grow. So, but first of all, you want to give them a sense of total dependence on God. So, by this, you want to teach them prayer. You want to mentor, model, and monitor them in prayer, in worship, in fellowship, understanding the priesthood, understanding covenant. Number 2, you want to give them a sense of morality. What is right and what is wrong? Righteousness and sin, discipline and reward, judgment and mercy, justice and grace, and forgiveness. All of these things, you want to make sure that they understand it. Number 3, you want to aim them to have a sense of human responsibility of response, so that people are accountable for their actions and choices, and there's a divine expectation on every life. Number 4, you want to give them a sense of spiritual identity. So, which means you want to train them to start living out of their spirit. You want them to start to know the difference between the 3 parts of their being. Of course, all of these things are graded. There are things that you're going to show a 3-year-old, and things you're going to show a 7-year-old, and things you're going to show a 17-year-old are different. But like I said to you, there's a whole new course that we talk about those things more in depth, how this can happen. Number 5, you want to give them a sense of purpose of family and roles within the family. You want to show them God's plan for the family. You want to teach them about fatherhood. You want to teach them about motherhood. You want to teach them about siblinghood. So those are culture pointers. Now, I use the word culture pointers because you really want them to take this on as their culture and value system and lifestyle. Number 6, you want them to give a sense of value of love and selflessness. And in this, you want to teach them right relationships. You want to teach them how to reach the world with their values. You want them to teach them how to live in agreement with godly values. You want them to live in a response so that they know what to do when there's an ungodly value around them. This is a sense of value and love and stuff like that. So you want to teach them about this. Actually, I think that should actually be broken into 2 anyway. But number 7 is sense of belonging. So in this, you want to share that sense of common identity. You want them to relax within their community, to understand that they have a community. Now, this is one of the things we lack as believers. We don't have a believers community. So the children are not even sure because we don't have a community of our own ethnic background, which often is not like it's very healthy. So they don't really have a community that they know with the parents. And that's why the children of this world are growing and they're calling themselves citizens of the world, because they lacked that very definitive culture of community. We have not shown it to them. The parents, mother is out working, dad is out working. There's not a lot of investment in showing them community as a wider people. Number 8, sense of value of character and integrity. You want to show them what it means to be a man or woman of character. You want to profile them and help them to develop internal strength and public strength. So all of these things, like I said, we can break them down further as we conversate towards the end of the year. And number 9 is the sense of position and placement. You want them to know where they fit in society. And the smallest society that they are currently in is the home. You want to let them know where they fit. if one is the eldest, you want to let them understand what it means to have the eldest role, to just want them to have a sense of position and not to feel as if another person is superior or inferior, but to understand that wherever you find yourself, like God has put you there and there's something you can do with it. And number 10 is a sense of authority. You need to understand how authority works. You need to understand the good and bad authority, and you need to teach them the best responses in all situations. Some of us have been a victim of wrong authority, where our parents who didn't understand how to use authority have used it in the wrong way. It has injured us. It would have been great if we understood how to deal with those things. So it's good if you can teach our children all those things. Now, some of these things I've shared with you are things that are great to know, and as a young family, it may be too much for you to handle. And that's the reason why we have communities like the SFM, that we are hoping that we can raise communities of families who are connected. We don't really care which church you belong to. That's not a big deal. We care that we belong to Christ and we have the same value system, that we can begin to come together and discuss all of these things and begin to create a community for the children you guys are having, and so that we begin to create a community where they can grow together and affirm this. Notice this: children are malleable. What we show them is what they're going to become. And right now, because we're not showing them anything, the world is showing them a lot. Internet is showing them a lot. So it's actually a clarion call that families in the Zion need to start thinking about these things that I'm sharing with you. And we all need to then collaborate together to create a community that God is going to raise children through. So I think that you want to, after done all of these things, at the end of the day, you want the children to have a sense of what true greatness means. In a society where the celebrity and stardom, it's just really about people who are brainless, talented people are the ones who are getting all the money, who are getting the fame. So the children are being, programmed in the wrong way. But you want to give them an idea of what true greatness means. You want to give them an idea of what real value means. You want to give them an idea of what stewardship means, that we are stewards, and it's a privileged position to be put in the position of stewardship by God. We're stewards of life, we're stewards of people, we're stewards of our own body, we're stewards of our own time. So you're teaching them faithfulness and stewardship from a very young age. And like I said, the ideas that we can discuss on how to actually help your children to understand all of this I'm mentioning, there are ways around it. I'm just talking on a very, very high level on what's important. And then you want to give them a sense of priority. If I have 10 things to do, how do I know which one is important, which one is urgent? You can start teaching them all those things from a very, very young age. You can start teaching them things about managing projects, creativity from a very, very young age, taking responsibility, even business, teaching them the principles of how value works in a sense of identity.